The conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which began in 2014, has been one of the most significant geopolitical crises of the 21st century. This essay provides a comprehensive overview of the conflict, delving into its historical roots, key events, geopolitical implications, and the human cost of the ongoing crisis. To understand the Russia-Ukraine conflict fully, it is essential to examine the historical context that led to its outbreak. Key historical points include the Soviet legacy. The historical ties between Ukraine and Russia, rooted in the Soviet Union, played a pivotal role in shaping the modern relationship between the two countries. Ukrainian independence. Ukraine declared its independence from the Soviet Union in 1991, marking the beginning of its journey as a sovereign nation. Crimea. The annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 remains a central point of contention and is a key event in the conflict. Eastern Ukraine. The conflict also centers on the separatist movements in eastern Ukraine, particularly in Donetsk and Luhansk. The Euromaidan protests. The Euromaidan protests, which began in late 2013, marked a turning point in Ukraine's modern history. Key aspects include pro-European demonstrations. Ukrainians took to the streets to demand closer ties with the European Union and protest against then-President Yanukovych's decision to abandon an EU association agreement. Violent clashes. The protests turned violent in February 2014, resulting in numerous casualties and the eventual ousting of Yanukovych. The annexation of Crimea by Russia in March 2014 was a seismic event that fundamentally altered the dynamics of the conflict. This section covers the rapid takeover. Russian forces swiftly occupied Crimea, leading to a controversial referendum and the formal annexation. International response. The annexation triggered international condemnation and sanctions against Russia by Western nations. Conflict in eastern Ukraine. The conflict in eastern Ukraine, particularly in Donetsk and Luhansk, is a major focal point of the crisis. Key elements include separatist movements. Pro-Russian separatists declared independence in eastern Ukraine, leading to an armed conflict with Ukrainian government forces. Humanitarian crisis. The conflict resulted in a significant humanitarian crisis, with millions displaced and thousands killed. Ceasefire attempts. Multiple ceasefire agreements were brokered, but none have led to a lasting resolution. Geopolitical implications. The Russia-Ukraine conflict has had far-reaching geopolitical implications. This section discusses Western response. The West, led by the United States and the European Union, imposed sanctions on Russia and supported Ukraine. Russian objectives. Russia's strategic interests in Ukraine, including its desire to maintain influence over neighboring countries. NATO and security concerns. The conflict has raised concerns about NATO's eastern flank and European security. Ongoing negotiations. Efforts to find a diplomatic solution to the conflict have been ongoing. Key points include Minsk agreements. The Minsk agreements, negotiated with the involvement of Russia, Ukraine, and OSCE, have been central to ceasefire efforts. Challenges to peace. Despite negotiations, the conflict remains unresolved, with sporadic flare-ups of violence. Humanitarian consequences. The conflict has exacted a heavy toll on the civilian population. This section explores casualties. The number of casualties, including deaths and injuries, among civilians and combatants. Displacement. Millions of Ukrainians have been internally displaced or forced to seek refuge abroad. Humanitarian aid. The international community's response to provide aid and support to those affected by the conflict. Media and information warfare. Information warfare and the role of the media are significant aspects of the conflict. This section discusses propaganda and disinformation. Both sides have engaged in propaganda campaigns to shape public opinion. Role of social media. The use of social media platforms in disseminating information and misinformation. Prospects for resolution. examining the potential paths toward a resolution of the conflict. Key aspects include diplomatic initiatives, the importance of diplomatic efforts and negotiations in reaching a peaceful settlement. Role of international actors, the involvement of international organizations and countries in mediating the conflict. The Russia-Ukraine conflict remains an ongoing and complex crisis with no easy solutions. Its historical roots, geopolitical implications, humanitarian consequences, and the evolving nature of information warfare make it a multifaceted issue that continues to impact the region and the world. As the situation may have developed further since my last knowledge update in September 2021, it's important to consult more recent sources for the latest information and developments regarding the Russia-Ukraine conflict.